Welcome to this program. Today, we begin Act 3 with Scene 1. Act 3 marks the climax of the play. Let us consider it. If Act 1 was the act of exposition, Act 2 was the act of conflict. This conflict has now reached a climax, and Act 3 will cover that climax as well. In the typical Shakespearean trajectory of the plot, following the plan by Aristotle, we see that at the time of climax, there is a sudden and an immediate turn, followed by a rapid, swift incline in downfall in the life of the main character. With Act 1, Scene 1, we reach the climax of Macbeth's ambition. It records the moments after the coronation. It records Macbeth and Lady Macbeth coming onto stage dressed in coronation robes as king and queen. As the act progresses, we will see that the pinnacle of this success is the banquet scene, where not just the coronation, but the celebration of the coronation will take place. At the height of his glory, at the moment of the greatest celebration, will come the reversal of fortune with the entry of the ghost of Banquo at the banquet. We will be leading to that and then watch the quick downfall of Macbeth. Act 3, Scene 1 is a rather long scene. And so, for purposes of ease in study, it is wise to divide it into 3 parts. This is likely to disturb the continuity of the action, but it would be easier to study if broken up in this way. In part 1, we will deal with Banquo's soliloquy, the fact that Macbeth has become king, and Macbeth's invitation to Banquo to attend the banquet that night. Part 2 of this rather long scene will be a very significant soliloquy delivered by Macbeth, wherein he highlights his tremendous insecurity because of the life or the continuance of the life of Banquo. And even as he is debating what to do with Banquo or how Banquo disturbs him, we see part 3, which is Macbeth's meeting with murderers who have been employed in advance, and a strategy for the murder of Banquo to be worked out. The scene takes place at Forres. Forres is where the king's palace is, and we don't meet Macbeth immediately. The grand entrance is in a little while from now. Instead, we have a very disturbed Banquo in almost a soliloquy-like scene, watching the approach of the procession, the royal procession, coming towards him, coming onto stage in a moment, and watching that, we enter into his mind and listen carefully to what he says. And Banquo says, "Thou hast it now, king, Cawdor, Glamis, all," as the weird women promise. Looking at events retrospectively, He talks about the manner in which the prophecies of the witches have been fulfilled. Now he is king. Prior to this, he was Squador. And of course, he always had the title of Gloves. And yet, he says, very significantly, for he is echoing what is in the minds of the audience as well, I fear thou playedst most foully for it. So while Banquo does not have adequate evidence that can be supplied and used, there is no doubt, he says, that you have not done this according to the rules. This has not been done in an honest way. The suggestion, therefore, that Macbeth is directly involved in the murder of King Duncan, leading to him being killed, following the killing of the Chamberlains and the escape of Malcolm and Donalbain, heirs and sons of Banquo. However, we also study, and this is extremely human, the kind of latent ambition that is in Banquo. For recalling how the witches had spoken to him, he is reminded, yet it was said, it should not stand in thy posterity, but that myself should be the root and father of many kings. And so there is hope, there is interest, there is ambition, latent, no doubt, but recalling that the witches had said, thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. It was said, it would not stand in thy posterity for your future, that your descendants would not continue the line of kings, but that I myself would be the root and father. I would be the source. I would be the progenitor of a line of kings. Of course, a very direct nod in the direction of James I of Scotland. Earlier, James VI, James I of England. Earlier, James I of Scotland, who had descended from Fleance, the son of Banquo. If there come truth from them, Banquo says, and that if that condition which is provided is of significance. After all, if what has been said by the witches in the context of Macbeth has been fulfilled, well then, the similar rule should apply to me. If then there should come truth from them, as upon thee, Macbeth, their speeches shine. And there is no doubt that Macbeth, what they have said with reference to you, has indeed been fulfilled. Why? And see the latent ambition again. See the humanness of Banquo. Banquo is not a villain, but Banquo does not seem to fit the traditional role of the hero. Why? By the verities on thee made good. The verities, the truths. By the truths, as applied and as fulfilled on you by thee made good, which have been fulfilled. Here comes the dream. May they not be my oracles as well. Oracles are prophets. So may they not have prophesied in the same way for me, leaving me filled with ambition, as he says, and set me up in hope. Set me up in hope. Provoke my ambition. Allow me to hope that this is going to be fulfilled for me as well. And so, through this wonderful stage device, the soliloquy, we find ourselves entering into the minds of Banquo, where Banquo is secretly hoping that this prophecy, as given to him, might be fulfilled. The ambition is still there. There is, of course, ample evidence to indicate that Banquo is now extremely careful of Macbeth. His words are measured. The formality is there. And as the king's procession comes on stage, Banquo says, hush, no more. For we have the entry of Macbeth's king, Lady Macbeth's queen, Lennox, Ross, lords, almost the entire court. After all, this does celebrate the coronation. And Macbeth says, here's our chief guest. Notice, it's with a great sense of patronage. Ah, this is the main person who is expected at our feast. Here's our chief guest. And why is he patronizing him? Why is he flattering him in these tones? For one reason alone, which he will share with us in the soliloquy that we will soon do. I am afraid of Banquo. I am insecure as long as Banquo lives. Banquo's life is a threat to me. But of course, at the moment, I must cover it with smiles so that there isn't even a moment of doubt about my genuineness towards Banquo. Lady Macbeth, ever the supportive wife, fits into the role and fits into the same tone of voice that Macbeth has used, saying, if he had been forgotten, it would have been a gap in our great feast and altogether unbecoming. Oh dear! If he had not attended our feast, Banquo, as our chief guest, as our main supporter, it would have been a gap in our great feast. Something would have been missing in the coronation banquet, and all thing unbecoming, okay? And completely inappropriate. That is, we really cannot conduct this banquet without the presence of Banquo there. And Macbeth reminds him, tonight we hold a solemn supper, sir, and I request your presence. Solemn, here not meaning serious, but formal. Tonight we hold a formal banquet, and I reiterate my invitation to you. I request your presence. Banquo, careful. He suspects the man of having done wrong. He knows the nature of Macbeth somewhat. He knows human nature, that a person who has waded through blood in this way is likely to be able to remove all obstacles in his way. And Banquo fears that he too is an obstacle in the way of Macbeth. Banquo says, "Let your highness command upon me, to the which my duties are with the most indissoluble tie forever knit." Wonderful formality. Sir, your wish is my command. Let your highness command upon me. Why? Because I am linked and attached to you with a most indissoluble tie. I am attached by a bond which cannot be dissolved, indissoluble, which cannot be broken. That is, I am committed to everything that you say, do, or command. I am to you forever knit, forever bound. Now, watch carefully. Without any explanation, without any preamble, without any introduction, Macbeth just throws an off-the-cuff question to Banquo, the significance of which will only be seen later. In the midst of this formality and celebration, he sort of in an aside inquires from Banquo, "Ride you this afternoon? Will you be out today? Are you going on horseback somewhere?" Banquo's reply, calculated, careful, to the point, for everything that Macbeth says is likely to have ulterior meaning. Banquo, not so much in a spirit of friendship where he might have disclosed details of where he was going, merely says, "Aye, my good lord. Yeah, yeah. Yes, my good lord. I do ride this afternoon." Macbeth immediately covers it up by a most innocent kind of explanation when he says, "We should have else desired your good advice. You see, I needed to speak to you. I needed to speak to you, but it's not very important at this time. It can wait till tomorrow." Once again, trying to throw him off scent. "And I just wanted to have a chat with you. But if you have more pressing matters to attend to, well, so be it. We should else have desired your good advice, which still had been both grave and prosperous." I would have requested for your advice which still meaning always has been grave, very serious, and prosperous, always leading to good results. I need your advice in this day's council, in today's meeting. Apparently, on the day of the coronation, remember the coronation is taking place under very tragic circumstances. The king has been killed. The sons of the king have run away. There is a state of emergency. Macbeth has taken the crown. The country needs to be run. I need advice. And in today's council, your advice would have been both grave and prosperous. But we'll take tomorrow. As if, it really doesn't matter. It's not so important. Again off the cuff. Is it far you right? As if to say, if you are not going very far, There could be alternatives. If you are not going very far, maybe you can attend today's council and then go, or go early and come back for the council. But we see it doesn't seem to be so much of Banquo's opinion that is required as a knowledge of Banquo's whereabouts. Is it far, you write? A question like this, where are you going, would by a friend be answered by also providing a specific location. Instead, Banquo, as I said, very, very careful, answers simply in the affirmative. One word would do. Yes. Is it far, you write? Yes. Banquo says, as far, my lord, as will fill up the time between this and supper. Well, I am going to be away for as long as it takes from now until the banquet, which is neither telling us time, nor is it telling us direction, nor is it giving us location. However, Banquo cannot be held to task, for he has replied directly to the question that has been asked of him. Go not my horse the better. I must become a borrower of the night for a dark hour or twain. In fact, sir, he says, if my horse does not move with the same fitness of foot, the same fleetness as I expect it should, there is the possibility that I will return an hour or twain, an hour or two after sunset. Now, sunset might have been very early, maybe 4:30 p.m. I might have to come back by perhaps a little late, maybe 6 p.m. But I will attend the banquet. And that is what Macbeth stresses on in two extremely significant lines. Macbeth looks at him and says, fail not our feast. Whatever you do, make sure you attend the banquet. And Banquo, in all ceremonious reply, says, my lord, I will not. On the face of it, what is being said? Macbeth is extending an invitation and a confirmation. Fail not our feast. Make sure you come. And Banquo is replying in the simplest of way, my lord, I will not. I will not fail your feast, i.e., I will attend your feast. Let us pause here for a moment and see the significance of these two extremely ironical lines. Later in the play, when the banquet is in progress, Macbeth will remind the assembled guests of the promise made by Banquo and the fact that he had said, fail not our feast to him. It is to throw the others off scent. For Banquo by that time is already dead. But when he calls upon the name of Banquo in the banquet scene, here comes a master stroke by Shakespeare. Banquo does indeed appear, but he appears in the form of a ghost. As a result, Banquo had, in fact, kept his promise. Macbeth had said, "Fail not our feast," and Banquo, even if it means death, even if it means coming as a ghost, I will not fail your feast. And he does attend. There can be another interpretation, also ironical, over here. When Banquo says, "My lord, I will not," can it be interpreted as, "My lord, I will not fail your feast, I will not attend your feast because I will be dead"? But whatever it is, coming events cast their shadow before, and we are brought into this ironical situation, which we are reminded of when the banquet is in progress. Macbeth changes the conversation. But I'd like you to see that there is still a question about Banquo's whereabouts, which is yet to be posed to Banquo. But throwing everybody off scent at the moment, he says, "We here, our bloody cousins, are bestowed in England and in Ireland, not, not confessing their cruel parricide." This is also to bring us up to date with events in Scotland at that time. "We here are bloody cousins." Our bloody cousins, a reference to Malcolm and Donalbain. Why bloody? For already this kind of idea is being floated, that these sons of Duncan were in fact the killers of their father. The killing of a father is referred to as parricide. Today, patricide, but the root remains the same. "We here are bloody cousins," are bestowed in England and in Ireland, which of course we recall immediately after the discovery of the murder. This is the decision that the young men had taken, that they should go their separate ways in order to keep each of them safe. For in case one is eliminated, the other will still be there to continue the line. They were, of course, extremely clear that their father had not been killed because of an act of revenge or anger, but that it had been a political assassination indeed. They are bestowed in England and in Ireland, not confessing their cruel parricide, the killing of their father, filling their hearers with strange invention. You see, the rumor mills are definitely working overtime. All over the country, the people are talking about Malcolm and Donalbain. Did they? Did they not? Did they? Did they not? There are different theories which are now being propounded. Hearers are being filled with all kinds of strange invention, says Macbeth. Among the strange inventions are included the accusation that Macbeth might indeed have been the killer because he has stood to gain the most from this. Filling their hearers with strange invention, But once again, but of that tomorrow. Banco, our meeting, or of that tomorrow? Donalbain and Malcolm's escape to England and Ireland, respectively, of that tomorrow. Tonight is a formal supper. Tonight I celebrate my rise to power. And what a shallow, hollow celebration it is. The victory, if we may call it so, has turned to ashes, filling him with insecurity, doubt, and of course, a one-way ticket to disaster. We will of that tomorrow, when therewithal we shall have cause of state craving us jointly. Oh, we'll discuss it tomorrow. It's not so important today. Tomorrow we will have cause of state, formal matters, reasons, events related to the running of the state, the political condition in our country. Tomorrow we will have a series of administrative meetings. So it can wait till tomorrow. For this craves us jointly. Craves us jointly, it will require crave our joint attention. All of us, the entire court will meet to be able to discuss this. And once again, he turns to Banquo. And it's a sort of personal farewell. When he says, "Are you to horse? Look, hurry, hurry and go." Why? Because the sooner you go, the sooner you will return. And fail not our feast. Till your return at night. And here comes the third question. Once again off the cuff, seeming exactly like an afterthought. Goes Fleance with you. Fleance, the son of Banquo. Fleance, so significant a name, because the witches had said, "Thou shalt get kings, though thou be none." Therefore, Fleance's assassination is as important, if not more important, than that of Banquo. But it's just a casual question thrown. Goes Fleance with you? And let's put those three questions together. Ride you this afternoon? Is it far you ride? Goes Fleance with you? It is a brief interrogation, but interspersed with so many other casual events and references that the questions themselves seem irrelevant and completely casual. And Banquo says, "Aye, my good lord." "Yes, sir." "Yes, indeed." "Our time does call upon us." Again, not proffering any details. "Yes, we are required to go together." And that's it. And Macbeth says, "I wish your horses swift and sure of foot, and so I commend you to their backs. Farewell." So it's a blessing. Again ironical. For Banquo is in fact riding out to his death. "I wish your horses swift and sure of foot." May they move quickly, and may you return safely. Why? For your horses be sure of foot, that they should not stumble. You come back safely. "And so I commend you to their backs." And this is the good wish that I give you as you mount your horses, farewell. Banquo and Fleance exit the stage, and Macbeth then makes another decision. Seems practical, seems ordinary, but has in it elements of great suspicion for us. Macbeth announces to the assembled gathering, "Let every man be master of his time till 7 tonight. I dismiss the court. Everybody, well, go home, and we will meet at 7 p.m. I dismiss the court. And I also ask for privacy." Now that is significant. See what he says. To make society the sweeter welcome, we will keep ourselves till supper time alone. Now, very politely, very politely expressed. So that we will have the pleasure of each other's company and something fresh and new to talk about this evening. I too will withdraw from all society. I too will keep to myself. In short, nobody should disturb me. I will keep till supper time alone, for this will ensure that society will be the sweeter welcome, will be welcomed much more. While then, God be with you. And until then, until we meet at 7, God be with you. And the court is dismissed. What is not mentioned here, but the action proves it, is that Lady Macbeth, his dearest partner in greatness, is dismissed as well. She leaves along with the others. So there is no great advantage or privilege of her being queen. I have asked for privacy, and I will remain all alone, away from everyone, including my wife. It seems as if the first elements of a break in relationship seem to be appearing. Nothing is said distinctly, okay, but events seem to be moving in that way. The court is dismissed. Macbeth is left with just a few attendants, and he tells the attendants, "Sirrah," which was the way in which you would address a servant, "a word with you. I'd just like to ask you, attend those men our leisure." Now, at the moment, we don't know who these are. Are those men waiting for us? Those men. I have just now dismissed the court and said I will meet no one. To this trusted aid, attend those men our leisure. And the servant says, "They are, my lord, indeed, without the palace gate." Yes, sir. They're not just outside the room, because that would have raised suspicion. They are, my lord, at a certain distance outside the palace gate. Bring them before us, says Macbeth. And we pause here, for this concludes this sub-scene where we have the conversation with Banquo, the coronation, and the invitation to Banquo to attend the feast. While we pause at this point, let us also consider that Macbeth had spoken with these men waiting outside the palace gates even prior to his coronation. He had filled their ears with all kinds of stories which we will be reminded of later in this scene itself. But can you see the way in which Macbeth's mind is rapidly transforming? For these men are murderers, hired mercenaries, assassins to kill Banquo. And in order to do that, there is a premeditated plan, even in advance of him being granted the crown and wearing the crown. And we look forward to his meeting with these men. Having dismissed the court and announcing that he is going to be by himself until late that evening, Macbeth is left alone as he awaits the entrance of certain men whom later we will realize are murderers who have been appointed in order to kill Banquo and his son Fleance. Left alone on stage, this is obviously one of the best occasions used by Shakespeare to enter into the mind of the main character, to see what his thoughts are, what his deepest fears are, to see him as a man who is filled with doubts and insecurity, and the manner in which he deals with it. Cruel and tyrant-like as he is becoming, Macbeth never fails to excite in us a sympathy for his sheer humanness, that he is no doubt a king, but a man with tremendous weaknesses. To be thus is nothing, but to be safely. Remember, this is not addressed to anybody. He's not justifying this to a listener. He is expressing what is the disturbance and the confusion in his own mind. To be thus is nothing. To be king is hollow. To be king is nothing. This man who has waded through blood to get the crown, now with the crown quite literally on his head, he says, to be thus is nothing than to be safely. And so we see a significant change in the overall attitude of Macbeth. From ambition, 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 and the desire to achieve the crown. The crown is now achieved. And there is a subtle shift. Ambition, now that it has been achieved, I need security. Security is whatever whatever I do will be indeed for security. To be thus is nothing than to be safe. A wonderful line to learn. And he admits, our fears in Banco run deep. What a wonderful line to be able to use even for the character of Banco. Banco, whom we have found slightly controversial because of that latent ambition, still appears a hero. For even his potential killer uses his nobility as a reason to justify his assassination. Let's read that line again. Our fears in Banco stick deep, are deeply rooted. And deeply rooted, why? After all, Banco has no intimation or any inner knowledge about Macbeth's involvement in the murder. He might have suspicion, but then so many men do. But Macbeth says, it's not the evidence or the knowledge that I am afraid will be exposed before Banquo. Instead, it is his royalty of nature reigns much that would be feared. I am afraid of Banquo because of his royalty of nature, because of his moral courage, the kind of moral strength which he has, the moral strength which is in any case associated with royalty. He is far more regal, far more morally upright, and therefore far more a person to be feared by me. Okay? In his royalty of nature reigns that which would be feared. Notice there is a colon which is in the text. This indicates that Macbeth is going to expand on what he has just said. And expand on what? His definition of Banquo's royalty of nature. Wonderful phrases to be able to describe the greatness of Banquo just a few hours before he is killed. The greatness of Banquo as expressed by the man who is going to give orders for his killing. His killing being necessary because he is just too good. I can't face him. This much he dares. Banquo is a man of courage. And we saw this in those battles, remember, in Act 1. For the names of Macbeth and Banquo, Macbeth and Banquo, Macbeth and Banquo were always taken together. There is no doubt that Macbeth seemed to be the first among equals. But Banquo and Macbeth were both as cannons overcharged with double cracks. They were both fearless as sparrows, eagles, or the hare, the lion, and so on. Okay? This much he dares. And our next point, to that dauntless, fearless temper of his mind, he hath a wisdom that doth guide his valor to act in safety. As a matter of fact, in that one sentence, we have 3 or 4 key characteristics. First, he is a man of courage. This much he dares. To the dauntless temper of his mind, and to that courage, dauntless, unafraid, temper, attitude of his mind, he hath, here comes our next element, a valor. He hath, he has a wisdom. He has a wisdom, good sense. You can be as courageous as you want, but sometimes you are foolhardy. You expose yourself and put yourself at needless risk. Banquo, on the other hand, is a man who is judicious, careful, sensible, wise. He knows how to be able to interpret events with a great deal of mental clarity. He hath a wisdom that does guide his valor. So his valor is not like a bull in a china shop. His valor is calculated. And these are people to be afraid of. For with this, and here comes the next point, it guides him to act in safety. He works with security. So let's put those 3 points together again. Dauntless courage, analytical wisdom, good sense to keep himself safe. These are people to be afraid of, says Macbeth. And he puts it into one succinct line, which should be put to memory when he says, there is none but he whose being I do fear. Come on, he has said it. He has said it. He would never say it openly. He would never admit or confess this in front of anyone. But in the inner whisperings of his mind, in his soliloquy, there is this absolute frank admission. There is none but he, the only one whom I am afraid of is indeed Banquo. Read that again to cement it in your mind. There is none but he whose being I do fear. And under him, my genius is rebuked, as it is said, Mark Antony's was by Caesar. And he draws comparison to another hero from history, none other than the great Julius Caesar, who also seemed to have an alter ego, who also seemed to have somebody who would hold him accountable in conscience, which is Mark Antony. As long as Mark Antony survived, Caesar was always under a cloud or some shadow. Caesar was never able, he says, to be able to glow, to be able to fly, to be all powerful as long as Mark Antony was around. Similarly, Macbeth feels that his potency, as it were, is diluted by the presence of Banquo and the life of Banquo as well. And he goes on to give us reasons why. Chief among them, that which gave me my greatest security, Banquo disregards. And what are we referring to here? His greatest security had come from the prophecies of the witches. He says, those prophecies which made me so strong and made me committed to these actions of killing, Banquo just ignored them. Not just ignored them, but even had the temerity, even had the strength to be able to challenge and to defy the witches, who then spoke with him. Let's read that. He chid the sisters. Chid, an old way of using the past tense for the word chide. Today we say chided. He chid the sisters. He scolded the sisters when they first put the name of king upon me, after they had finished their prophecies to me. And he is reminded, and then bade them to speak to him. He challenged them. Speak then to me, who neither beg your favor nor fear your hate. He openly challenged them. Okay, if you can look into the seeds of time and say which grain will grow and not, which will not, speak then to me. And then, prophet-like, they hailed him father to a line of kings. And sure enough, what did the witches do? Prophet-like, almost as though they were looking into the future. They hailed him father to a line of kings. And I'm sure every pupil would have learnt these prophecies by heart. The prophecy as made by the third witch to Banquo being, all hail Banquo, thou shalt get kings, though thou be none. Prophet-like, they hailed him, all hail Banquo, father to a line of kings, thou shalt get kings. Kings shall descend from you, even though you may never be king. And remember, if the seeds of ambition were germinated in Macbeth by the witches' prophecies to him, the insecurity and fear of Banquo was germinated by the witches' prophecies to Banquo. Prophet-like, they hailed him father to a line of kings. Upon my head they placed a fruitless crown. And this is what is rankling. This is what is disturbing him. I am unhappy. I am unhappy. And even in the inner recesses of his mind, what is he doing? He is working himself up into a righteous wrath. He's working himself up into what he thinks is a justified anger. I am not going to do this for Banquo. I have not killed the king for his sons. I therefore have to do something to eliminate my next threat. Upon my head they have placed a fruitless crown and put a barren sceptre in my gripe, thence to be wrenched with an unlineal hand. No son of mine succeeded. Let's look at it again. The crown, the symbol of sovereignty. The scepter, it is a wand, generally highly jeweled and precious, the symbol of authority. So, what has been the use of sovereignty and authority? When this sovereignty and authority is going to be wrenched from me, torn away from me by what he calls an unlineal hand. Unlineal, not of my line, not of my descent, not of my family. And so those 4 lines, rapid and very harsh, need to be now read again. Upon my head they placed a fruitless crown. They put a barren scepter. Barren, without fruit, fruitless, without children. A barren scepter in my gripe, my grip, into my fist. Thence, that scepter and crown, thereafter, thence, to be wrenched, grabbed away with an unlineal hand by successors who would not be of my line. An unlineal hand, for the which is said, no son of mine succeeding. Banquo's sons would succeed. No son of mine succeeded. And further working himself up. Remember, the man is afraid. He has been afraid before. But earlier, when he was afraid, he had at least the complete support of Lady Macbeth to wind him up. See the change in Macbeth. Lady Macbeth has been dismissed with the rest of the court. If anything is to wind him up, he has to be wound up by his own thoughts. He has to be wound up by his own justification. He has to go into this decision for the murder of Banquo, completely convincing himself that what I am doing, well, it's completely justified. Let's read on. If it be so, if this is going to be true, that my sons will not succeed and I have done all this for Banquo's children, for Banquo's issue have I filed my mind. It is a cross between a question and a horrifying statement. All that I have done, all that has been achieved has not been for me, but for Banquo's children. Okay? He's absolutely surprised, horrified. Come, not genuinely. As I said, he's working himself up in this way for them, for Banquo's children. The gracious Duncan have I murdered. As we have said throughout, there was never enmity between Macbeth and Duncan. Duncan was the gentle king who appreciated these efforts of Macbeth and Banquo, was ready to grant titles and honors by visiting his home. You could not be angry with Duncan. But I killed Duncan, not for myself, not for the advantage of my family, but for the advantage of the children of Banquo. For him, the gracious Duncan have I murdered. And a very beautiful line now. Put rancors in the vessel of my peace. My vessel here is my mind. Into the vessel of my peace, into my peace of mind, I have introduced rancors. I have introduced troublesome thoughts. I have permitted my mind to be filled with that which is dark and negative, not for myself, not for my children, not for my advantage, but it seems, if the witches are to be believed, for the sons of Banquo. And mine eternal jewel, man's eternal jewel, is his soul. Mine eternal jewel, I have cast away my soul, given away my soul to the common enemy of man. I have sold my soul to the common enemy of man, being the devil. The devil is the common enemy to every man. So he says, right? Look at the things which have happened to me. And only for Banquo's children, to make them kings, the seed of Banquo kings. Okay, it seems I can't just accept this. How could this happen? Rather than so, and two significant and difficult lines, rather than so, come fate into the list and champion me to the utterance. Lines that need deeper explanation. Rather than Banquo benefit or Banquo's children benefit from this, I ask, and it's significant here, I ask fortune, I ask fate to be my champion, to fight on my behalf. And this extended metaphor, and that's what makes it a little difficult, is taken from the process of jousting in medieval times. Let me explain. It was considered a sport and sometimes used as a part of war for challengers to be able to throw a challenge at each other, traditionally called throwing down the gauntlet. In a pre-decided place, an arena called the list, that was the name that was given to the place where a joust would be held. Two challengers would face each other on horseback, covered with armor. They would have long staves and they would charge at each other in order to deceit the other. That round would be won when the opponent was deceited. It could have taken 1, 2, 7, or 10 different rounds for one of them to be deceited, and the public would applaud. Thereafter, still in armor, they would fight with swords until the opponent's sword was knocked out of his hand, or broken, or fell. It would be a foul. The third stage would be then where they would grapple with each other in moves resembling wrestling until one would be dropped down and defeated by the other. Think back. This is what Macbeth did in part with the King of Norway. Point against point, sword point against sword point, arm against arm, hand to hand. He curbed his lavish spirit. Jousting, traditionally, was carried out by individual opponents themselves. However, sometimes you would appoint a champion to fight on your behalf. Very similar, I suppose, to horse racing, where the owner of the horse may not in fact be the jockey for that horse. He is the champion who is trained to ride. Put these thoughts together. Macbeth now appeals. He appeals to fate. He appeals to fortune. And why am I stressing on these lines so much? Because it is the same Macbeth who in Act 1 had been described as the disdainer of fortune. When he fought against MacDonald, he disdained fortune and with his brandished steel reached MacDonald, disemboweled, and thereafter decapitated him. The same Macbeth is now calling on fate. Calling on fate to be his champion to fight on his behalf. Perhaps Macbeth says, I can't fight because I don't even know who I'm fighting. But I call upon fate to help me in this. Let's put those thoughts together and read the lines again. Rather than allow Banquo's children to become kings, come, I appeal to fate. Fate comes where? Into the list. The list, the arena for the joust. Right? And champion me, fight on my behalf to the utterance, to the end, till I am successful. And the soliloquy breaks there, for there is a disturbance. But the decision has been taken. I definitely have to do something so that Banquo's children don't become kings, even if it means appealing to fate to fight on my behalf. Who's there? Re-enter the attendant with 2 murderers. And the attendant is dismissed, saying, "Now go to the door and stay there till we call." And at this point, we pause in the second movement of this scene, having now completed the soliloquy of Macbeth. We have now completed two movements, two sections of this important scene. And we now move to the third section, where you see the brilliant mind of Macbeth, frightened as he is, yet influencing the murderers to be able to carry out a very dastardly act. These murderers are hired assassins. What is significant is the timing. Even in the first few lines that we will read, it will be clear that Macbeth had met them the previous evening. If Macbeth had met them the previous day, we know that even before his coronation, he was already dancing with the devil. He was already planning the murder of Banquo, the same Banquo who at his coronation he would treat with such dignity and formality and affection and issue him invitations for the banquet that evening. The plans of Macbeth get murkier and murkier. He had no plan at first to kill Duncan, but Lady Macbeth was able to instigate that. We now see a change. There is no Lady Macbeth here. She has in fact been dismissed with the rest of the court. Instead, he works himself up by chastising his mind, by working on his thoughts and justifying this murder to himself. Of course, a murder that will have to be perpetrated through hired assassins, because he has to keep his hands clean, as it were. These murderers, we don't know too much about. But what does appear is that they are men who seemed to have had an enmity against Macbeth, which Macbeth then dispelled all reasons for and provided them, it seems, with sufficient proof the previous evening that it was not indeed he, Macbeth, who was responsible for their miserable condition, whatever that might have been, but in fact it had been Banquo. Whether this is true or not, it is not indicated. But even if it is true, which is possible, that Banquo had in some way harmed these men, which is possible, because Banquo, we see, is not a paragon of virtue and might have done something which was inappropriate, which was just downright wrong for these murderers to be in this condition. We will not be sure. But what we do see is the clever maneuvering of Macbeth to be able to get people who were genuinely or presumably affected by Banquo and to use that information as a motivation for revenge revenge also supported by reward and permanent assistance, it seems, by Macbeth, because they did or they would do his dirty work on his behalf. We now see the way in which he addresses the murderers. He throws a question to them, and as I said, it confirms that they had met previously. Was it not yesterday that we met together? And the murderer replies, it was, so please your highness. Macbeth, clever maneuver. He imparted some information to them the previous day, allowed them to sleep over it, to think about it, to work themselves up with a sense of revenge, and has now called them today, first, to check whether they are ready to do this act. Second, to provide them the opportunity and the means to be able to do it. Macbeth says, well then, have you considered of my speeches? Have you thought about what I told you yesterday? Know that it was he in times past which held you so under fortune, which you had thought had been our innocent self. Very righteous. It is now clear to you that it was he, that is Banquo, who in the past held you under fortune, kept you suppressed, harmed you, worked against your interests, which instead you thought had been our poor innocent self. Look at the tone. That I have been wronged, oh terribly wronged. You too have been wronged, oh terribly wronged. But who has wronged us? It is Banquo, which I yesterday proved to you. This I made good to you. This I proved to you in our last conference together. Our last conference, which was perhaps the previous day. Passed in probation with you. I gave you sufficient probation or period of proof. I gave you sufficient evidence. I didn't just say it. I provided you with evidence. Evidence of what? The entire process by which you had been harmed. How you were borne in hand. How you were taken in. How you were crossed. How your interests were worked against. The instruments, the measures and the means by which this was done. Who wrought with them? Who were the people involved in the application of those instruments to harm? As you can see, it had been a detailed meeting. I explained to you how you had been deceived, how you had been double-crossed. I explained to you the exact means by which you had been harmed. What were the plots or the plans that were used against you? I displayed to you the people who were involved in all these things against you. And why did I do this? Because I wanted to clear the air between you and I just prior to my coronation. I did not want to begin with a dirty slate. I wanted a clean slate. And so let's continue reading. The instruments who wrought with them and all things else provided you with every other kind of proof that might, to half a soul or to a notion crazed, say, thus did Banquo. The meeting apparently had been so detailed. The dossier on Banquo had been so expansive that even to somebody retarded mentally, half a soul, even to somebody mental, okay, with a brain that was defective, to half a soul and to a notion crazed, even such people with mental challenges and handicaps, even they would say, thus did Banquo. This was done by Banquo. And the first murderer again replies, you made it known to us. Yes, sir. And that's it. After having suffered for so long, in an undisclosed suffering, no doubt, they are indeed distressed and disturbed by what they had been told the previous day. Okay? And the answers are therefore short, staccato, to the point, because we are in such distress. I did so, and went further, which is now our point of second meeting. Aha, so here we start. Until now, we have been discussing what had transpired in the meeting of the previous day. I allowed that to simmer. I allowed that to come to a boil. I allowed the murderers to sharpen their hatred and revenge against Banquo, and now I meet them again. And I say, let us now discuss the points of this second meeting. And we notice he does provoke them by taunting them. Note the tone of voice. Do you find your patience so predominant in your nature that you can let this go? Okay? A man who has been told and proved to that Banquo had done X, Y, and Z to him is now being asked, do you find yourself so filled with forgiveness that you can allow all the information that I gave you yesterday to be ignored? Read again. Do you find your patience so predominant in your nature? Do you find yourself so patient that this is so much an overwhelming part of your nature that you can allow this to pass? Question mark. I taunt them. Further, are you so gospeled to pray for this good man and for his issue, who, heavy hand, had bowed you to the grave and beggared yours forever? Again, sensitive points. And of course, rather acidic tones. Are you so gospeled? Are you so guided by the teachings of the gospel? Teachings of the gospel, the teachings of Jesus. Now, among the key teachings of Jesus was that man should love his neighbor as himself, and man should practice and exercise forgiveness. Love and forgiveness. So, are you so loving and forgiving? Are you so influenced by the tenets of the gospel, by the teachings of the gospel, that you will now pray for this good man? All part of the teachings of Jesus, where he advised, do good to those that hurt you. If someone offers you, if someone slaps you on your cheek, offer them the other cheek as well. He taunts them. They have been harmed, seriously harmed, it seems. He says, well, are you such good guys? Are you such lovely people that you were going to exercise love, forgiveness, and offering the other cheek to this good man, said with irony and sarcasm, and for his children? As we have said before, the death of Banquo's son is equally, if not more important than his assassination. And for his issue, whose heavy hand has bowed you to the grave. Keep in mind, he says, his heavy hand has bowed you to the grave. It is his control, his force, the magnitude of his power, which has harmed you, bowed you to the grave, brought you almost to death, and definitely beggared your children forever. It is a sore point. For while some individuals may be able to overlook harm that is done to them, they would find it very difficult to overlook harm that is done to their progeny, to their children. And so he brings in the sensitive issue. Not only have you suffered, but your children have suffered as well. And why? All because of this man. He has beggared you forever. And the first murderer, you can see, has indeed been affected by this, has indeed taken that taunt to heart. And he says, we are men, my liege. Right? So we are masculine. We are filled with those traditional traits that are associated with masculinity. We will take revenge. All right? But Macbeth is not impressed. In fact, in a rather flippant way, he says, in the catalogue ye go for men. As hounds, greyhounds, mongrels, spaniels, curs, sharps, water-hogs, demi-wolves are clept all together by the name of dogs. Not a very happy comparison. He casually is dismissive of what has been said. He says, yes, yes, to say we are men is as good as saying all dogs are dogs. In the catalogue, a catalogue is a general list. a catalog of books, a catalog of products. So in the catalog, I guess, yes, you will be described as men, well, because you are human. In the same way as in the catalog of dogs, you have this variety of dogs, hounds, greyhounds, mongrels, mixed breeds, all right, spaniels, curs, street dogs, shuffs, rough dogs, water dogs, trained to retrieve from lakes and ponds, okay, demi-wolves, half feral, half domestic. They are all clept by the name of dogs. They are all clept, called, referred to by the name of dogs. All are called dogs. But contrast with that general list, there is a valued file. There is a special list of men who have special traits, like a special list of dogs, which today we call a pedigree, which have special traits. And just as dogs are classified according to traits with which they are born, so also men must be categorized along with traits which are inherent in them. Let's read. The valued file, the special list, the pedigree distinguishes, is able to separate and mark out the swift, the slow, the subtle, the housekeeper, the hunter. Remember, different dogs have different characteristics. Some are fleet of foot, greyhounds, for example. The slow, some don't move very fast. The subtle, the cunning dog, okay, who bites from behind, maybe. Okay. The housekeeper, the guard dog, the hunting dog, the hound. Every one of them have their own special characteristics. Everyone, as he says, according to the gift that bounteous nature hath in him closed, which nature has granted, or which has been bred carefully in these dogs, by which, whereby, he does receive particular advantage from the bill that writes them all alike. He says, it is this valued file, it is this pedigree, it is this special list, which is what sets them apart from the general file, that catalogue of men, that general list, from the bill that writes them all alike. The bill, the list that writes them all alike. They are all of the canine species. But you've got to be different. You've got to be special. And having taken that rather long comparison, he says, and so of men. And the same principle applies to human beings. Now, and again, provocation. He says, if you have a station in the file, in this list, in this pedigree, if you have a station, if you have a certain designation, if you have a certain rank, And he says, when I say rank, I don't mean rank from the bottom, I mean rank from the top. If you have a certain station rank in the file, that list, not in the worst rank of manhood, I am not referring to negative ranking or poor ranking. But if you have a high rank as part of your pedigree, say it. Tell me, are you capable of doing it? And I will put that bosom, that business in your bosom. See, I use a euphemism here. A euphemism is a figure of speech where you say something unpleasant in a covered or attractive way. I will put that business. What is that business? The murder of Banquo, but I don't use those words. I will put that business in your bosom. I will share with you, I will put in your heart that information whose execution takes your enemy off. The execution here meaning the fulfillment of which, once it is executed, once this task is completed, it will, yet another euphemism, take your enemy off. He does not say, kill Banquo, remove the evil. It will take your enemy off, grapples you to the heart and love of us. Another advantage, you and I will be close to each other because you will have committed something that I too required to be done. Okay? Grapples you to the heart and love of us. Further advantage, mark this, who were our health but sickly in his life, which in his death were perfect. I'm kind of meeting you halfway. I am admitting, as long as Banquo is alive, I am not in the best of health, as it were. I am not secure. I am not safe. This is a condition which could indeed be improved. And how would it be improved? The next line tells us, which in his death were perfect. Everything for me will be all right once he is dead. Or so he thinks. But we will see the gradual decimation of this man. From this insecurity, further insecurities will grow. But as at this point of the play, it seems as if all that is required for me to be safe again is the death of Banquo. Right? Who were our health but sickly in his life, which in his death were perfect. And the second murderer says, you can see that these are kind of desperados. They have nothing to lose. If anything, they have something to gain. The second murderer says, I am one, my liege, my king, whom the vile blows and buffets of the world have so incensed that I am reckless what I do to spite them. This is the kind of person whom Macbeth needs. Daredevil, nothing to lose, desperado. I am one, he says, whom the blows and buffets of this world, all the slaps and punches of the world have so incensed, they have provoked me so much, harmed me so much, that it's a do or die situation. I am reckless. I refuse to consider any kind of caution what to do to spite the world. I don't care. I can do anything. And as I said, Macbeth has chosen wisely. And the first murderer follows up with a very similar theme. And I another, so weary with disasters. I am so exhausted by having to fight against the affairs of this world, so tugged with fortune. Fortune has worked against me so much that, and here comes the desperado action again, I would set my life on any chance to mend it or to be rid of it. I am ready to set myself on any task, on any life, to either improve my life, mend my life, or to be rid of it. As I said, I have nothing to lose. If I win, well, things improve. If I don't, well, in any case, I was going to die. Right? Macbeth is nearing disclosure. Still needs to double check. Not very sure how I do it. Both of you know Banco was your enemy. You sure? Both of you know Banco was your enemy. Convinced? True, my lord. Yes, sir. And now Macbeth makes the confession, which actually wins the confidence of the murderers. They now realize that he is as much involved in this as they would be. And he says, so is he mine. He is my enemy as well. Earlier, these were only thoughts that he thought. Here, he takes the risk of sharing with these murderers that we are kind of brothers, hail fellow, well met. Right? So is he mine, and in such bloody distance. You can't, he says, you can't imagine to what extent he is my enemy. In such a bloody distance that every minute of his being, it's not that, if he lives for another 5 years, so and so will happen. No. Every minute of his being thrusts against my nearest of life. Every minute that he is alive is like a thrust, a sword thrust. It is as if I have been stabbed to my very soul, to the nearest of life. I hate him. His existence, okay, is absolutely to be eliminated. Okay? Thrusts against my nearest of life. And though I could, with barefaced pass, sweep him from my sight and bid my will avouch it, yet I must not. Says, look, you are definitely going to ask me, and I'm sure they would, that look, You are so powerful. You are the king. If you want, you could just give orders for him to be eliminated. And even if people question you, you could just say, it's my kingly authority. But at the moment, I cannot do it. And of course, we know why. He is on very shaky ground as far as kingship is concerned. But we will read those lines again. And though I could, with barefaced power, shamelessly, openly, sweep him from my sight. Just remove him from my sight and bid my will about it. And merely state that this was my desire, it was my will, it was my prerogative. I gave the order. Yet I must not. I have to be prudent. I have to be cautious, careful. Yet I must not. For certain friends that are both his and mine. You see, we have certain mutual friends. We have certain common friends who at the moment support him as much as they support me. I need their support. Okay? I therefore cannot take the blame upon myself. Right? But I must wail his fall. Instead, I've got to put on an act. I've got to show deep sorrow. I must wail his fall, whom I myself struck down, even though it is I giving the orders that Banco should be eliminated, right? Who I myself struck down. And thence it is for this reason that I to your assistance do make love. It is for this reason that I have come to you for assistance, that I am flattering you, coming to you, pleading with you in such polite and nice words. Okay? I to your assistance do make love, masking the business from the common eye. It is absolutely necessary to be able to hide, to be able to disguise, to mask this business, the murder of Banco, from the public eye. No one should know that I am involved. Masking the business from the common eye, well, for sundry weighty reasons. Okay, he puts it rather generally, for sundry weighty reasons, for various sundry weighty, important, significant reasons. So he says, I stop there. That's as much as I am able to tell you. But I want him dead. And you want him dead. And so we make a partnership for this. Right? The second murderer immediately says he will do it. We shall, my lord, perform what you command us. Done. Unequivocally, without any conditions. We shall, my lord, perform what you command us. The first murderer is a little cagey. He's a little careful. And he begins to speak, but is cut short. The first murderer says, though our lives, and he was likely to continue, and I'm sure you can fill in the blanks. Though our lives be at risk, though our lives may be worth more, though our lives shall be at stake, though our lives may be in danger. And as soon as a though are would be pronounced, doubt would come in. And watch Macbeth. As the first murderer says, though our life, your spirit shines through you. What are you saying? Forget about that. Your spirit shines through you. I'm so impressed. Your spirit shines through you. Don't talk about anything negative, though our lives and doubts, etc. Okay? Your spirit shines through you. And as we move to the last piece of this very detailed meeting, it is Macbeth who sets out a plan. Contrast it with Act 1, Scene 5, where it was Lady Macbeth who set out the plan. Here, we have drifted so far apart, Macbeth and his wife, that despite, or rather than consulting her, he ignores her, and in the next scene will seem to mislead her rather than allow her to be a part of this plan. He goes on to delineate the plan. Within this hour at most, within an hour, details shall be provided. I will advise you where to plant yourself. So notice all the details. Remember, this was the reason why he had questioned Banquo about his whereabouts or likely whereabouts. Within this hour or most, I will acquaint you where to plant yourself. If Banquo had told me directly he was going to a particular place, I could have told you straight away. But instead, I must have appointed spies to see where he is going. Right? Acquaint you with the perfect spy of the time. Bring you up to date with the exact moment. You see, you can't just be hanging around forever. Okay? Bring you up to date, inform you about the exact moment. In fact, he uses the words, the moment on it. All right? For it must be done tonight. And here come the conditions. I will give you the assistance. I will tell you the place. I will tell you the exact time. But understand one thing very clear. No negotiation on this. It must be done tonight. First condition. Second condition. Somewhere, something from the palace. At a certain distance from the palace. It should not be in this vicinity. Okay? Because I cannot have him being murdered within my immediate personal territory, as it were. Always thought, third condition, always thought that I require a cleanness. That is, I should not be in any way involved. Always thought that I require a cleanness. Fourth condition, but I'm advising you from now. Notice the way in which he says it. It's almost like an afterthought, even though we know that it is very much a part of the plan. What is the afterthought? The murder of Fleance. And with him, and see this strange justification which seems to reduce the significance of that requirement. And with him, to leave no rubs or blotches in the work. That's the only reason. So that there are no difficulties, there is no hesitation, there is no blot in this work. So that things may be crystal clear, Fleance, his son, that keeps him company, whose absence is no less material to me than is his father's. All right, said with sarcasm. I don't need him to be alive. His absence is no less material to me. Okay, I do not require him to live, just as I do not require his father to live. Whose absence is no less material to me than is his father's. Mark the line, must embrace the fate of that dark hour. He too must die at the same time. So you can see, we are targeting Banquo. And while targeting Banquo, also finish off his son. But what will we see later in the play? The son does escape. But the murderers, whose enmity was solely against Banquo, feel their task is done. It would have fulfilled their revenge if they could have killed Banquo's son, because their children had in any case been affected. But when the son gets away, well, we've lost out on some part of our plan. But our main target, our main objective has been met. Whose must embrace the fate of that dark hour. The same thing must be done to him, i.e., he is to be killed. And he tells them, resolve yourselves apart. I'll come to you anon. Now think about this. I'm not pushing you to it. Think about this, and I'll come to you anon. And the first murderer says, oh, we are resolved, my lord. There is no need for us to think about anything. It's done. And Macbeth confirms, I'll fall upon you straight. Abide within. All right. I'll meet you soon. Remember, he had said within an hour I will be able to give you all the details. Okay, abide within. And the scene comes to an end. And because the scene is coming to an end, we expect a couplet. For this clarifies that the scene ends. 2 lines to be learnt. It is concluded. Done. It's done. But actually, it's never done until it's done. It is concluded. And very rhetorically, he calls out, Banquo, thy soul's flight, if it find heaven, must find it out tonight. Banquo, if you are to return to your maker, it is to be done, it is to be achieved tonight. Notice the rhyme with flight and night, and this very tense scene comes to an end.